This is Jack McCoy. I am the host of the video blog Mastering the Art of Singing. And I've been first nine of the volumes of this blog were me basically just posting the basics on singing, various approaches to singing, various elements of singing that need to focus on if you're a singer interested in being a singer, want to basically up your game as a singer. That's a lot of what this whole video blog is about. And I like to think of three things, three E's, three: educate, enlighten, and entertain. So the first nine volumes, anyway, was just me doing the basics of singing. Even volume two, I was referred to back to as an actual vocalese. And even it's just one, there's many more that can be done, but it's just one. You do everything I said in that one, it'll really strengthen your voice. It'll broaden your range and work it from the lower end and strengthen your lower end. You go up to the high end, keep expanding it out. But anyway, from 510 on, uh, in order to kind of keep uh, expanding the horizons of this blog, I invited people to be interviewed and people who have started with basically, voice trainings, and we kind of focus on that in the beginning, kind of like where the training one was and where it came from, and how it is that that kind of got them to where they were going as far as all the various things they're in. And I've tried to approach this from cover different angles, variety of people performing in different backgrounds they've gone into, and I'm going to continue doing that. It is a bit of a challenge. I'd hoped I would do about one of those a week, but most people I contact are business people who are still in the business of music. And as a business aspect of it, that means you make your living. And of course, that's your priority. A lot of times, when you make a living, you might get a gig at the last minute, and whatever plans you have, you got to shelve those to go do what it is you do to make your living. So some of these have been challenging. We've had to get together a few times and reschedule and things like that. So it has been consistently once a week been able to do that, and I'm still working on it to make that as a goal, trying to get one of these a week. And but anyway, I would kind of like to start backwards because this one is kind of an auto interview. I never really did fully a background on me and what it is, how I got to be where I am, and I want to kind of start at the end first and then work towards the beginning. In the end, meaning that what I am is a gondolier, and I've been a singing gondolier for the last 23 years now in Vegas. And I'm going to focus on that because we're kind of doing a little shift in the content as far as this Mastering the Art of Singing blog goes. And that is, as a gondolier, there's going to be aspects of it's going to say memoirs of a gondolier. How do people find love? And because as a gondolier, Um, I got in the habit of liking to listen to people under. I always ask people what it is as far as how they met. They're kind of like their love stories and that kind of thing. And then I would write up these little parodies about that, as part of the gondolier experience. And basically, just right off the cuff, there's like five basic ways I discovered a long time ago how it is people first met, and one of which is like where you work, where you go to school, friends you hang out with, and a lot of them still meet what they call the pubs and the clubs, that sort of thing. And also, surprisingly to me, I didn't realize how many people met that way, but they met when they were set up, like through their family, their friends, and all that sort of thing. Anyway, but anyway, there's now a top six too, because added to that now is social media, and that has creeped up its way. When I first started this job over 20 years ago, that wasn't really even a thing yet. People were only interested in kind of it was somewhat like Wikipedia, and it was information sites. People did string conversations, and it was subject driven by where whatever their topic interest was. People would ask questions, share knowledge, and that kind of thing. But people actually had started meeting on those things. The downside of that was they had no social media aspect of it, in that they didn't have any bio. They didn't have to tell it where they were, or any of that kind of thing. And so people start these conversations, fall in love, and found out they live, halfway across the country or different countries and all kind of stuff. So it's pretty challenging for those people, but early on. But that's kind of how it was back in the day, anyway. So, but anyway, I want to start there because this is why I'm going to share some things from time to time about things that happen on my boat, how people first meet, and how they first meet, and that kind of thing. I want to focus on how it is they first met. Today, one of the more interesting things about that was that we here in Vegas, right, Venetian is right next door to the street to the Sphere, and we watched that be built for like many years, even before the pandemic started. It was already under construction, and it didn't open up till basically the early part of this year. And we've had a variety of people there. First, people kicked it off with YouTube, and it's a whole completely kind of dimensional experience. And so it focuses on number one, various groups that come in right now. Currently, the Eagles are there. We had first was U2, then it was Grateful Dead, and the Eagles. I believe Coldplay is coming up next. And but then there's an ongoing show there that they show all the time called Postcards from Earth. And I throw that in because that's something that you can come take in when you go to Vegas. Is if you don't necessarily want to go to the expensive show, featured one of the major exits there. There's a thing called Postcards from Earth, and you can go and see that. They have a variety of times of showing for that. You can find that on thesphere.com, I believe. But anyway, reason I bring that up because on my gala right today, I had a couple I met, and I asked them how it is they come to Vegas, what they come to see, and they come to see the show at the Sphere and called Postcards from the Edge. And he said, "It says this is about time I got to go because he says I'm the one that made that movie." So it's interesting. The people that actually put that whole thing together was on my boat today, and they said they just now got a pass to go get to see it for free. So you would think that would have been given a long time ago, but anyway, that just kind of came about, and that's what they came to do a watch anyway. So these are the kind of things I get to hear in my boat, a variety of things and how people made interesting stories they have. But anyway, you're going to see me referring to my notes. I want to hit a lot of bullet points here because I don't want to miss points. I'm not being interviewed by anything else to keep me on point, so I just thought I would do this and refer to these things. Anyway, so like I said, broadly, the thing about interviewing people is that kind of see how they started from and then how they got to the various levels that they're at and how that kind of enabled them to do that. It's kind of like when you want to be an athlete. Well, if you enjoy running, that's one thing. But if you want to be a competitive athlete, then you got to train, and you're going to be up against other athletes. And sometimes they're in the competitive aspect of show businesses that they're when they have auditions and things, they're only looking for a certain amount of people, and so they're going to obviously take the best of that they can get. And so there's a really good one of the interviews is with Satomi Hoffman, and she gives a real good background on what it takes to audition at Broadway. If you take those things to heart, she said that will give you a good, really solid grounding as to how to prepare yourself for just about any kind of audition. Because if you are really good at it, you're well rounded, and you have a book to work with, and you can kind of apply that to whatever it is you're auditioning for. That's suggest you go look her up. Tommy Hoffman, anyway. So anyway, as a gondolier, it's kind of like more or less all the experiences I had in my life led to me being a gondolier. Early on, like for example, is that I had a singing telegram service years ago that I kind of started as my own kind of business first, so I had something to do. And I started that in conjunction with a young lady named Cindy Joe, who I met in college. And she was kind of the brains of the operation because she knew how to really make it work as a business. And I had applied to be a singing telegram company at the time, and I was so enthusiastic about it. And they were in Portland, Oregon, and I was in Vancouver, Washington. And I said, "Gee, I want to help you get started in Vancouver, Washington." And I was just so gung ho, and they kept looking at me like they didn't trust me, or there was something. I figured I was up to something, and I didn't quite understand that because I was just being as sincere and open-hearted as I could be. And later, as I was leaving the place, it dawned on me what the look was about, and it was like because I got that look because I think they were thinking I was just picking their brain, and I just was planning on doing this whole thing on my own, and wasn't really interested in playing their company, which was completely wrong, by the way. But I got that's what actually gave me the idea. I went, well, you know what? If this doesn't work out, if they don't hire me, maybe I should consider doing that thing. And yeah, they didn't call me and hire me, and so I sat down and talked with Cindy Joe about this, and I'm going to hope to interview her sometime. I've invited her anyway. I'm not sure she's going to come through or not, but anyway, she lives in Toronto now. But we had a lot of early experiences together. We went to a school of opera together, and we were on music majors in college together and things like that. So anyway, this says my story as I end up as being a gondolier starts with the various talents it takes to be a gondolier are, of course, singing is one, major one, actually. Singing, first audition they're going to want to hear is your singing. And then after you get past that hurdle, first day of training, they want to know if you can swim. And yeah, if you work on the outside ride, the water's going to be over your head out there, and so you have to be able to know how to swim, be able to get back in the boat, things like that. Anyway, so yeah, I would go to school. We lived we're from Washington State originally, and born in Eastern Washington in Chewelah, Washington, here to Spokane. My chap father got a job working for Fish and Wildlife, so we kind of moved around a little bit. First was in Fort Washington, not too far from Chewelah. I worked in a fish farm. Then he went to Aberdeen, and this is where I became really kind of conscious as a little entity. I got old enough to start remembering things, and I would be on my way to school in Aberdeen, Washington. And we lived in a fish hatchery, which was miles out of town, so it was a bit of a commute by bus to go to school. And on the way into school, I'd be looking at things out the window and be starting making little songs up about them. I remember particularly when I got to the monkey tree, and there is a specific kind of a tree called a monkey tree, basically because monkeys can't climb it. It's real prickly, and monkeys don't like to climb on it, so I don't know why they call it a monkey tree. But I would make this little song. That's when I got to the monkey tree. I knew I was getting pretty close to school. Make little songs about things and saying, kids do that a lot. They'll just look and they'll make up little ditties about things that they see. Well, that was me too. And first time I had an on-stage experience was we moved to the Upper Washougal area, up the Columbia Gorge area, and there was last year they had a one-room schoolhouse. They had two schoolhouse districts. They were one-room schoolhouses. Like last year they were open, and then they converged into one school district and had a newer, modern school built for grade school. But anyway, second grade, and first performance was Good Shibboleth Pop. And back when I was in Aberdeen, and I had a teacher there, for whatever reason, she told my parents that I had some music aptitude. I know maybe I was singing to myself and she heard it and that kind of thing, but whatever, she kind of pointed out to him that you might want to, see that where he goes in this direction, be supportive or whatever. So anyway, first stage experience was that. Anyway, second grade. We had like three whole kids in our class. This is a very small rural school anyway. And but in a school and in the grade school I went to, we didn't have a choir. I joined the band, and band was important because there I basically learned note values. It's like, okay, I learn an instrument is one thing, but when you read music, when you play instrument, you read music and you have to play the note, but you have to know not only what the note is, but the note value. And that is how long you hold the note for. There's any particular dynamic to that note, like it's going to be loud or soft or things like that. You learn about a lot about reading and note valuations and how long to, like what the music's about, and that's kind of where I picked up that from. It wasn't until I was at one time at a concert and I was playing this band with another school in the district from Stevenson, Washington. They had this high school choir sing, and I was so moved by their singing. I just listened to them, and it was like very moving experience to me. Remember, one of the things they did is this train. This train don't take no prisoners. This train no anyway. So when it came time, I finally got into high school. It took me a minute to, first of all, I got in the band like I normally do and stuff, and then I heard their choir singing. I went, yeah, I want to do that. So sure enough, I joined the choir, and that's so my early experience was with choir, and that again, comes in handy knowing how to know values and things like that. And then my voice had changed right time I was 16. My voice just went low. I just went off the charts low, and so that put me into a bass section as to the lowest voice singing. And so I did well enough at that. I got in some special performance choirs that we had one called the Cordeliers. And that kind of got you a little bit more of, on stage performing and moving, that kind of thing. Choir, pretty much, you just kind of sit there and you read music and you sing. The special performance choirs is that you might get out and move a little bit to the music and things like that. And that's where the Cordeliers were. And there I got into usually some of their best people in those choirs were referred to something called Music May. Some of my classmates got to join in that. And also, I got to be the first one in Washougal High School where I went to was got to be in something called All Northwest Choir. Sent an audition tape and they liked it, and that was down in Eugene, Oregon, at the MacArthur Court. They did a big concert and stuff there. It was the first time anybody from my high school had gone. But then we did a couple of musical stuff too, and I remember we did Oklahoma, and my voice was so low, I I had to sing one part of Farmer Carnes an octave lower than it was the same key that the song was written in, but I voice dropped down an octave. Oh, the farmer and the cows and should be friends, because I couldn't sing it in the higher key, but they wanted me to get into the show. So that's kind of where I was at vocally at the time. Anyway, so along comes getting into a community choir. Anyway, sometime later, I had a quick, short little bit. I got a small grant to go to Western Washington State. And through a friend of mine that was actually going there, and I kind of tag along with him, and he was going for a grant, and he didn't get one, but I just jumped in there and managed to get a small grant to go to Western Washington State, and so that I did. But being right out of high school, and unfortunately, I got involved in let's say extracurricular activities, and I just kind of just didn't stay focused enough, and dropped out. And I was a college dropout right from the get go. It took me about a year later before I kind of got my act together and decided, I really want to pursue this and do something. So I went to the Clark College Community. It's Community College, anyway, in Vancouver, Washington. And that choir was under the tutelage of George Bell, and I learned an awful lot about musicianship from that man, because he really would focus on the dynamics. Most times, I got to say, even singers and choir directors, they just kind of look at dynamics and they just kind of flatten them all out. They'll just kind of touch on each one a little bit, but they really won't just get into the real dynamics of the music. And George Bell was a guy who just took every little note that the dynamics was written about. You make it louder here, you make it softer here, and that whole choir became like a small choir, that it was so responsive to dynamics of the music that was a real uplifting experience for me, because that taught me, now building upon music and knowing more values like that. Now I understood what it would be to be really be a musician. And we did magical choir, and that was all like singing without any kind of accompaniment. That's like what they call a cappella singing. And I learned a lot of strength about basically how to stay in pitch, because sometimes it's like you think a good singer or whatever, but you use the pitch bikes, which I referred to in some of the early blogs that I made. Make a pitch bike. You start off with the key of a song, and you blow the pitch, and you're in that key, and just sing the whole song. When you get done, see if you're still in the same key, because a lot of times you're not. You'll just kind of slip down a little bit. And the dad's singing madrigal actually was a real good experience to really develop strength and really paying attention to keeping things in the right keys and the right intervals and things like that. And when you let those intervals kind of slide stuff, that's when you like get out of pitch. And so that was another really good thing that I learned in terms of that. There was like a variety of, I had about three voice teachers because I was a voice and composition major. Had three voice teachers, got some early voice training there for the first time, like real individual kind of vocal training. But where my really training came was, and I was just kind of bored and trying to get out there and do musicals and things. And in Portland, Oregon, they had a variety of musical theaters, and they had summer stock kind of theaters and things like that, and a firehouse theater. Anyway, I went auditioned for some of these things, and I got on a show called the Desert Song. Desert Song is Romberg. I think it was like Sigmund Romberg wrote that music, and some real beautiful music in that. My part was Ali Ben Ali, which was like basically it was a sultan, and that was a great. And Rod Esme was involved in a school of opera, and he heard my singing, and he knew I had a good voice, but he also knew that I still had kind of some pitch issues. In other words, I wouldn't always pay attention that I was singing out of pitch, or I would start, getting out of key and that kind of stuff. But when I sang with other people and we had music playing, I would pretty much stay in key. But he kept avoiding me through the rehearsals for this school of opera, and I, kind of turned him down for the longest time. Wasn't know that he was really interested in knowing that. But eventually, just by his charmingness and insistence, I finally went to a rehearsal of this, and I just kind of fell into this kind of filling in for people's parts who weren't there as they were playing through this music. And honestly, if people play the notes out for me, I can pick it up pretty fast. And so I learned an entire role. I kept coming back and I learned an entire role of Leporello and the Giovanni. And Leporello was a very kind of a buffo kind of role, which is like you play kind of a comic character. And I enjoyed and got into that so much that it was the first time, honestly, really, that I kind of developed some acting skills. So the School of Opera wasn't just about singing; it was about acting, character development, role playing, that kind of thing. And so this is where became a stage performer. Kind of got more enhanced as I went on, and so that's kind of where you got on that when you're playing a role part. You have a whole character that you stay in that throughout the course of the opera or musical that you're in. You stay in character. Anyway, so yeah, this was known as the Portland School of Opera and Related Arts, and that introduced me to Dorothy Fisher Jones. And she had an opera career in Germany and opera houses in Germany. She was from America originally, but for whatever reason, she went to Europe and she learned to speak the language German very well. She learned a lot from, she said, from a libretto. So in other words, she learned German languages in the music libretto. She would speak the language that was written into the music, and she had a very eloquent German dialect that she spoke because of that, because she learned from these things. But anyway, she wanted to see people have an opportunity to learn the arts of opera, and so I got into that school anyway, and it just kind of by osmosis kind of got absorbed into it. And that's when we did a whole variety of roles. The first one was Leporello, played Don Alfonso in Così fan tutti, as also a Mozart opera. Both those two, Don Giovanni and Così fan tutti, were Mozart operas. And then I was supposed to do this part. I think originally in that Don Giovanni has this low bass part, but I had learned the whole entire role of Leporello, and the music director wanted me to do it because I already knew it, and so I wanted to do it anyway because I really enjoyed it. It was a very dynamic kind of role, and so when it came around to me in the Magic Flute, also a Mozart opera, there was a role for me. Zoroaster, which was just a low voice kind of role, but honestly, I'd looked through that whole thing and I just didn't care for the roles. Roles kind of stoic, and I'd gotten used to playing characters. So Papageno was kind of like a lower baritone part, and by voice study through Dorothy Fisher Jones, it became not just a bass anymore, but I learned to expand my range, my voice from being a bass all the way to being a bass baritone. So consequently, I could start doing baritone things like that particular role of Papageno. And anyway, I had a lot of fun with that role. It was very much a very entertaining role. It's kind of like a half bird, half man character. It's kind of a surrealistic kind of story. Anyway, so And during the course of that time, I also got involved in a school, or in a touring company, Portland Opera touring company. Got to be in their choir by invitation because they're looking for men for Fidelio in a men's choir. And I got involved with that, got to be with that. And then I was in the Portland opera touring company, got to go around and tour a particular opera. And then we got a music educational thing, and they had a whole thing sponsored by Portland Opera Guild and Junior League that commissioned some of us performers to go around in schools all over the Portland area and do this little intro to opera thing. And I got to do that, and that was kind of like a young audiences. Is by the way, if people are into particularly the classic arts or that kind of thing, or you're looking for a venue to do a program that has an educational aspect to it, young audiences is something you can try out for. They have tryouts like once a year, and but you have to commit to it for like a whole year. And you will young audiences tour, so like it's not just going to be in one given area. You're going to be touring, and if you're got the time and the wherewithal to want to do that. That's a very good program to get into, like especially if you have something that's educational. You look that up, young audiences. You can find everything online these days of how to go about it, how to audition, and when their auditions are, where they are, and all that kind of stuff. In college also too, and I I started working as a singing waiter. I wanted to do something always singing wise. Matter of fact, that was a goal of mine in my life. Is I always wanted to just be able to sing. And that most people say that's great. So what are you going to do for a living? People, you're probably going to hear that. Have you ever mentioned that that's kind of where your interest is and that kind of thing? People say, that's really good. So what are you going to do for a living? So in other words, a lot of times you get the encouragement to, do the singing thing on the side, but always, keep pursuing something that puts the, bread on the table. And that's not bad advice either. Like, because if you just start wanted to be a singer and there's like no real opportunity where you're at to do that, so you're probably going to starve to death and you'll be what's called the starving artist kind of thing, a scenario. But you don't want to do that, especially if you've got people depending on you in your life. If you're all by yourself and it doesn't matter if you starve, well, that's another thing. But you got people around you or animals or things like that need your support, you might want to consider doing maybe even a part-time job, that pays the bills. I did storage. I worked for a company that did storage. Storage manager is a pretty light duty kind of job for the most part, and I would like practice my music and that kind of thing. Usually had time to do that while I was doing that job, and then at evening times I would go out and do shows. But anyway, as a singing waiter though, is like I kept putting one foot towards being able to sing all the time. And I thought, well, how hard can a waiting thing be? Probably the hardest job ever tried to be is a waiter. And the one you have to really apply yourself to it is that you really have to know your menu. And also you got to know cocktails, you got to know wine, and particularly dinner houses where like I worked, this is what becomes, part of the job. So, but anyway, as I kind of ventured out from being a singing waiter, well, those were usually very ethnic related. In other words, first place I worked as a busboy, it was a French restaurant called Chateau La France. And so we would sing ensemble songs, some things in French, some things just, songs to sing. And then they let me do some solos there. And then from there, I went into. I was not a very good waiter, I might add, because I didn't even know what the heck I was doing when I was worked at that place, and so I just kind of dropped out of that. But then later, when I was older, where I could actually serve alcohol and stuff like that, well, then I worked at a place called the Blarney Castle, which is an Irish place. So now we did Irish music, and then I worked after that at a German restaurant called Edelweiss Inn, and that's where I worked for several years. And we would do ensemble folk German songs together, and whatever kind of solo you want to do. He really liked the fact that I was going to school of opera and I could do, powerful performances, things like that. And that became a really good experience as well because usually when you're on stage, the audience is subjugated to the performers on stage because they're down and away from you, and you're like raised up high and that kind of stuff. But when you're a singing waiter, you're right on top of people. They're looking right at you, and it's a good way to get over nervousness. There's a lot of stage frightness or whatever that can happen to you, and that's basically because you got things you need to work out as far as being able to get through that. Well, being a single winner is pretty much what got me over that because people were so close. It's like I just kind of finally let myself realize that people are just people. They're not there to really overly criticize you and judge you, that kind of thing. A lot, like I said, stage fright just comes up from you really invert on yourself. And I have a whole blog about that on one of the blogs that we talk about is overcoming that and various things that focus on doing it. Anyway, I would put together these programs. Also, as I was got to the point where I was working in storage manager, that I would have these put a whole together program of musical theater review. Because as a Portland Opera Chorus, we would do uh, opera half program, the other half would be like doing musical theater reviews. And they had this wonderful program with Salishan, Oregon, where we did which was we got to stay at a nice resort and we got I think one good dinner and got to use the resort facilities. And I kind of got involved in producing shows like that on my own, just kind of involved in mostly just do old musicals. And then there was a whole circuit of retirement places around. And so once I did one of them, he kind of made got they could call, get on the horn, talk to other resort directors in terms of entertainment, that kind of thing. And I got a whole circuit of retirement facilities do the same show, just take it around, do it all. It was just me and a pianist, which ended up being, by the way, for the most part, the musical director of the School of Opera I went to. We ended up doing a lot of shows and things together. A wonderful man named Hans Janovich, originally from Czechoslovakia. Anyway, so I was doing this for a long time anyway. And then there came a time where I was trying to see what else I might do as far as music wise to pursue a career, fully into music and that kind of thing. Because I was just like, here I am doing part time shows, I'm doing part time, working part time, and I just never branched out beyond anything beyond that to find anything full time. That from the area I was at, Portland, Oregon, and so one thing is you could pursue is if you really go fully into opera. Well, the teacher I had at the time, her connections were primarily to Germany, and I could have gone to Germany and start working through opera houses there. Kind of start working through the choirs first before you ever get into get the language down, and really get into do more solo work. Well, I just wasn't fully into the whole idea about just uprooting and going to Germany. And so I just kind of held back on that. But then, long story short, my lady friend, uh, anyway, she knew that they were. Because I was looking, and there was another teacher that was named Franco Iglesias, and I met him and I started working a little bit with him. And the only real benefit that he had was that he was really connected to opera world, particularly in this country. He had worked with Placido Domingo, and uh, and his wife was an international opera coach, or not opera coach, but was a agent. So working with him had all the advantages of connection, and started to go into opera full time. And I really started looking at thinking, what? I've been just toying away at this. Maybe I should just go for it. I'll just go for this whole thing. But around that time, my lady was kind of getting the idea that this was going to happen, and she was not real crazy about that idea. She was bringing up, well, why don't you go to Vegas and you could be a gondolier by day, come home at night, and you don't have to worry about traveling around the country and being gone and this, that, and the other thing. And I said, well, I'll think about that. And this had happened prior to my considering doing what I'm doing, and finally came to the point where that. Yeah, I decided to dive into the whole thing in the opera world was just a bit of a reach. And yeah, now I'm going to be, gone. And we had started accumulating rescue animals and try to do that all on her own was a lot to expect her just to stay home while I was gone for weeks on end. And so that's when I started considering, okay, well, let's look into this. Because Vegas was over 1,000 miles away at this point. I'm living in Vancouver, Washington, and just to uproot and go to Vegas meant, a lot of things like leaving family behind and this, that, and the other thing. And I thought, well, what the heck, I'm gonna go ahead and audition for this gondolier thing in Las Vegas, and if I get the gig, I'll move there. Otherwise, forget about it. I'm not just gonna move there and see if I can get it. So anyway, contacted them and sent them a video and little resume of what it is I do and did and that kind of thing. And I didn't hear anything for, I don't know, a month or so. And I was thinking, well, I'm too far away. They're not going to hire me. And I thought, oh, I guess that's not going to happen. But then out of the blue, they called me on a Wednesday afternoon and say, okay, class starts on Sunday. Can you be here? It's like, okay, this is a lot. I'm going to quit my job. I got to pack up. I have a friend, luckily lived in town where I could stay with during the training period. And so we had that whole discussion and boom, away I went. Auditioned. I mean, got down here in person and went to the training class and I managed to get through that. I was scared. It scared me at first when they said, okay, so we're going to go through this training class and, most people make it, but, some people don't. I'm going, don't. There's no don't. I already gave up a job. I got to do this. This is a job now. I got to do this. There's going to be no don't for me. I'm not going to like go home and have to find another job all over again. So yeah, I developed myself as strongly to this commitment. And yeah, I could swim. I could get out back in the boat, and I could sing. And so away we went. And the preparations for that were that I had a good classical voice training. And you don't have to be a classical voiced person to do a job as a singing gondolier. But the thing is, the music is very rooted in Italian. In other words, it's you do Italian aria, that's great. You don't have to do Italian arias, but it's a bonus if you do, because a lot of times people will ask you for that. They want to know if you knew Italian arias and things like that. Number two is you're going to do like American Italian genre of music. And if you know that well enough, you can actually use that for your auditioning when you want to audition. On that side note, I can't post anything by contractual restrictions about that on the video. But if you email me, you'll see a variety of things available on the site, one being singermanusa@gmail.com. Well, you can reach me at that. And if you want to start a personal conversation, I can tell you how to go about. If you want to be a singer gondolier, you start as a part-time on-call person. You got to get through training first, and you got to be able to have enough coordination to be able to row a boat. You got to be able to get out of the boat and back in the boat, and but they'll give you all the training about how to go about that. It takes a couple of weeks. And yeah, they always have need for on-call people when they hire, and so usually you'll get work like that. And then as eventually as other people drift out of the program and stuff, which usually happens fairly quickly these days, you start getting shifts and to the point where you can tell them if you want to work part-time or full-time. And either way, one sooner or later you're going to get, particularly if you excel at what you do, you're going to get more shifts and you're going to get schedule and that kind of thing. It took me longer than it takes most people these days. It took me about 6 months before I started getting went from on call, just because it was around the period of 2001 and that whole thing what happened with 9/11. I kind of put a shudder through this town, and so there was a kind of a hiatus period. We kind of like wait and see. Because otherwise, most time you really kind of move up faster through that program. But there's where you can start again. The benefits are basically is that you get insurance and you get some flex time that's basically only lasts for up to a year from your start date, and then it renews every year. You have to start over again. And the other aspect is you get a lunch at the Venetian, one meal a day. So sometimes people are come here or have been doing a lot of other singing gigs at other places, and but now they're looking for something steady. Because show business, one thing about it is, yeah, you can be feast and famine. You can work on cruise ships. You can do shows and be in shows, that kind of thing. But they'll come and they go. And when you're out of a show, now you're looking for another one, and it might take a while before you get that one. Singing Gondolier, steady, 7 days a week. They have two shifts and they have an inside and outside ride. So always having a lot of need for gondoliers all the time. We have as many as 100 gondoliers working on here at a time. And, some are coming and going. And so there's always that, aspect of, I always, particularly people like to keep working. I came in here when I was 50 years old in 2001 anyway, started a whole second career. When I finally got to that spot where I got a job where I get to sing for a living. There was, I thought it was just a pipe dream. And, it's something that, keep that in mind, always keep your other job. And, but here it actually all happened finally, and it's steady. I didn't have to worry about, whether I'm going to contract or don't have a contract. I get to be, do it all the time. Anyway, so that is pretty much in a nutshell covering it, what it is to, gone through what I did through to get to the point where I'm at. And if you ever want to check it out sometime, yeah, just come to Vegas and watch the gondoliers do what they do. And I always say if you're going to go for a ride, sit at the turnaround sections where the boats turn around and listen to them sing and listen to the whole crew of gondoliers sing. And when you hear one you like, you can request that person. And that's something a lot of people don't realize you can do. But that's a kind of little benefit to if you know what you're doing, just kind of stop and listen and pick out a gondolier you want. Anyway, that's a lot of singing. You're required to do two songs per boat. That song will be probably maximum about a minute and a half. Well, I do three songs per boat. One of them is the parody a song I like to do to, throw a little something personal about people in their lives and that kind of thing. And so I do three songs a boat. So that's like, probably about 18 boats a day times three. That's a lot of singing. And the fact that, I have some classical training. One of the real benefits is that you learn how to sing in a way that you don't just all sing from your throat. If you're singing from your throat all the time, you're going to wear your voice out in a hurry. You just can't do anything for a long term. And you do something like this for any length of a show, or you're doing gondoliering, it's long term. And in other words, your voice, you need to be able to strengthen up your stamina enough to be able to do that. And it takes a while because, yeah, first time you might go a couple times, you might start getting hoarse because you're not used to singing so much. Here's another little side note, too. Like in between gigs, whenever I would do gigs, if I didn't have a show to do, I would do my vocalises, and those are in volume two. But there's a variety of vocalises, and if I ever got into private study, I would share the whole gambit of them. But anyway, it's a good thing that I would constantly use my vocalises like to and from work, and that way I always kind of kept my voice in shape, even though I wasn't singing. Because if you just like don't sing, and then suddenly you're singing, it's like you're going to find your voice is all out of shape. And like I said, it'll wear out fast. You won't have much of a range to it. Your range will shorten up. And so, like I said, I always kind of interim, always did vocalises and always I try to keep the voice up that way. And it's good that way because then when something comes up, you're ready. You're ready to do it. So anyway, like I said, stay tuned. We're going to have more interviews from more people as time allows, and we'll try to always. I try to find different angles, people who have come at this whole performing thing from different backgrounds, and so no matter what it is you're kind of looking into as far as your career physically, and you can kind of see the variety of ways there is to go. And now I just brought up another one, being up a singing gondolier, and that's for people who number one don't mind moving to Vegas, and number two is, if you really want to have a gig that's pretty steady. Sometimes people have other talents in Vegas that they can do other things while they're here. So they do a part-time gondolier gig and while they kind of pursue their other things that they do. And some people are impersonators and that kind of thing. We have a variety of people. Some are impersonators and they have their other things that they do. Some people like to go away on cruise ships. Some people are in shows in town. And so they break away for time to go do the show, and then they'll come back. And that happens here a lot too. So, okay. So, anyway, look forward to the posts. The ones particularly that will say Memoirs of a Gondolier. They'll be sharing stories, or we're probably going to do the AI to kind of embellish upon those stories and how people met and that kind of thing. And so you can kind of enjoy a little bit of the benefit of that in that respect. So thank you guys very much, and I appreciate you, following this blog. And if you find it interesting, or you know somebody who's kind of out there who's kind of looking to consider different ways to go vocally, or can benefit from some of the tips that we share here, like I said, basically we attempt to educate, enlighten. The enlighten aspect is how it is that you can come to an aha moment about something that you're struggling for, or trying to reach, or trying to learn, or trying to get some insight into, and try to show a variety of those things for that anyway. And so I've shared some of those tips that I had too, to hopefully enlighten some people and where they want to go. So anyway, thank you very much for your time, and I do have scheduled a singer coming this next week that we've had two times we've tried to work out together before, and I discovered one of the aspects of doing these things is the technical aspect is Apple and Android sometimes don't want to work well together, and we've had a couple of goes at this with Craig Thomas anyway, but we finally figured out how to get it done, and we're gonna have a interview scheduled for next week. And he has a whole different, from a tenor aspect, approach to singing. Did a lot of cruise shows, and he's like to produce shows, and so he has a whole other aspect of things to share with you. So, thanks again for your time, and hey, keep on singing.